Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the December 20th, 2023 Worcester Township Board of Supervisors business meeting. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? My name is Rick DeLello. I'm the chairman of the board. We are, to my right, walking up is Steve Quigley, and to my left is Lou Betts, our vice chair. On the side table, we have Wendy McKenna from our solicitor's office and John Everts from our engineer. And on the back table is Sean Halbum, who is our township manager. First and foremost, does anybody have any informational items for the board tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this meeting is being video recorded for future broadcast, and the Board of Supervisors met on December 13th, 2023 to discuss personnel.
Thank you, Sean. I also informationally would like to say that we closed on the Griffith property on Monday. That had been an open space acquisition we made a few months ago, and as it worked through the iterations, we went to closing on Monday successfully, and it is a Merry Christmas for open space in Worcester. So first and foremost on our agenda, we have public comment. We do ask that you limit your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any public comment for the board tonight? John?
Thank you, everybody. Merry Christmas to everybody.
So we're going to ask if you're going to hand something out to us first, and then
Yeah, I do.
fair enough.
These are photos. My backyard. 1322 Road. No. And then I have a prepared statement.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is if you could sign the sheet with your name and then tell us who you are, and then you can proceed with your comment.
Worcester.
So we can get it all, and we'd ask that you pull, first off, make sure the little green light is on, and if you could pull it as close to you as you can.
Yeah, my name's
There we go. Perfect.
John Pelusi. My address is 1324 Dell Road, Worcester, Pennsylvania. I gave you, gentlemen, Board of Supervisors, pictures of my backyard. You'll clearly see that there's stakes there with 40-foot high trees that are all going to be torn down. That's why I wanted to show you what it looked like and what you're asking to do. So I'm just going to read this. Regarding the proposed use of eminent domain at 1324 Dell Road in Worcester, for the expansion of a state road that includes approximately a quarter-mile bike pedestrian path to nowhere. I believe it's from Woodland to Water Street. This project in its current form raises several critical issues that I think must be addressed. Firstly, I think the absence of a comprehensive safety and security study is a glaring oversight for any public infrastructure project, especially one involving road expansion and the new pedestrian pathways. It's crucial to understand the potential risk and implement measures to mitigate them. Without these studies, you are moving forward blind to the possible hazards that this project might introduce to our community. As you know, Worcester does not have a police department to patrol the area. It must rely on the state police. Secondly, there is some confusion and a lack of clarity, at least when I was at other meetings, about the maintenance and upkeep of the proposed pedestrian path. Who will be responsible for its maintenance, cleaning, and general upkeep? Without clear policies and dedicated resources for these tasks, we risk creating a neglected space that could become a liability rather than an asset to the community. Moreover, the project has not addressed the issue of noise pollution. Expanding a road and adding a bike path can significantly increase noise levels in the area, affecting the quality of life for many, 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 many residents. The absence of a noise pollution impact study means we cannot anticipate these changes or plan mitigations effectively. Moreover, there is a potential for adverse noise pollution during the temporary easement for the construction phase. Furthermore, the environmental impact of this project cannot be overstated. The proposed removal of several 30-year-old pine trees is not just a loss of greenery, but a significant blow to our local ecosystem. These trees provide numerous environmental benefits, including air purification, habitat for wildlife, and the reduction of noise and heat generating off the roads. The cost of replacing these mature trees, both financially and ecologically, is immense and often underestimated. Mature trees like these cannot be simply replaced. Their growth and contribution to the environment are the result of decades. In conclusion, with the development of infrastructure, while the development of infrastructure is essential for the progress of any community, it must be approached with thorough planning and consideration for all the people. The environmental impact and clear policy for maintenance and safety. The current proposal for the state road expansion with the bike path lacks in these critical areas, making it unsuitable and potentially detrimental project for our community. That's my feeling. The other thing I'll just say, what's the whole project cost, the cost of the entire project? 12 million, 14? I mean, you don't have to be exact.
Well, we don't know exactly, John, so we can't give you an exact figure, but it's probably north of 10 million when it's all said and done. You know, there's...
And my question is, you see my yard, you see the trees, you see the privacy. I just want to say, I love Worcester. Been here 20 years. Bought the land, built a beautiful dream house. It's going to significantly impact the value of my house. Significantly, number one. Number two, we have no police force. I've called the state police. They never even came when I was being burglarized. They said they caught the burglar on the road, so they didn't have to come to my house. That's a separate issue. But we don't have a police force. We don't have readily available public sewers. We don't have streetlights. We don't have sidewalks in communities. And we're going to go do this with a bike path and road expansion? I think the only people who are going to benefit is people cutting through Worcester down Valley Forge Road. But I just don't see the benefit for the whole community as a public use. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, John. We appreciate the comments. We'll be discussing, obviously, when the motions come up. If any board member wants to make a comment now, that's fine, but we certainly can...
I know, John, and I sympathize with what you're dealing with. Unfortunately, we're dealing with the state, and if I could stop it, I would, and I can't. So, I mean, it's above us, but we have to cooperate with them. How much, and I see the stakes in your ground, so I guess they're pinning it already, so how much are you losing?
Oh, so all those trees are gone.
I understand the trees, just from your backyard to see
From the fence over, I would say 15 feet, maybe.
15 feet you're
20.
losing. So,
You're going to be getting splashed from my pool.
I understand, I'm sympathetic, I listen, John, I wish I could, put up a barrier wall and a whole bit. I wish I could move your house 20 feet forward, so you're not losing any more backyard.
How does that happen with the envelope for zoning? I mean, now that my house...
That's a bigger question, because if your house was being built today on that lot, then this would have to be, the setback would have to be adjusted, because when they built your house, they didn't know they were going to widen that road.
Right.
And again, I guess you have to account for that, especially with a major road versus a smaller road. But, and again, I agree with you, and if there's anything we can do, anything I could do, and again, working with our attorney and our engineer, if there's something.
There's a project that went on in Norristown, Johnson Highway. I don't know if you drove by it.
Yeah, the Bishop Kenrick.
And they put up a 14-foot high soundproof barrier wall for those residents.
Right.
That's something I would look into. Take part of that north $10 million, throw some on there.
We can make recommendations as again, this is a long path. They're not doing this tomorrow.
No, I understand that, but it's a little unnerving knowing that the government can come and take my land.
Yeah, I know.
After I just put my whole
You built your house and then they want to take your property. I get it, I understand. And again, Rick's noting that, and I think I'm not gonna let it go. I'm gonna try to push and try to see if there's anything that can be done. So, it's just,
John, a follow-up to Lou's comments. We're on the same page, and probably Rick as well. I guess to sum it up, I heard Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, today speak about all the people coming to New York. And he's telling the people to go to Washington and talk to the people in Washington that created this problem. We deal with the same issue, that the state's there, it's not the federal government this time, but the state mandates these things for us sometimes, and we sit there, much like you, with our thumb up our ass, sitting, what can we do? How can we handle it? I think we have to maybe look in with Matt Bradford, our state rep, who probably takes care of a good part of the Johnson Highway corridor down there. Twice. Okay.
So,
Yeah. I'll try to reach out to his office tomorrow and just see what's up with that. And once again, how do I say this nicely? There's numbers in Norristown as far as votes. And I hate to say it comes down to that sometimes, but with votes come things. And I think that one of the things that maybe happened down in Norristown, that's why they were granted this, is the population density down there. And a lot of times it has to do with population density, much
Right.
like along the turnpike. The people in Worcester got no walls. Now, Upper Gwinnett got it, Temenson got it, but I don't think any part of our township really had access to the walls. They put a little piece in down by the Ford plant, which was 30, 40 feet, which did nothing, but I guess the way Worcester rural has its good points, but when it comes to taking advantage of the political process, we're the low people on the totem pole, and we don't get access sometimes to this money that the population gets. So we all feel the same as you. This is being shoved down our throats as well. We don't really appreciate it, but it's hard to deal. It's hard to fight the big brother up there. And
It is a state road, though,
yeah,
and the state is basically mandating this road expansion and the water drainage system.
so it's a balance, John. It's a balance. So I've been through with the Northeast Extension, when they had the widening of the Northeast Extension, we had a whole issue with sound barriers over, so I'm off of North Wales Road, and they took a slice of our whole community. On the backside, there was a lot of trees and a lot of different things, and so they had to go through the process of compensating us for what the value was there. I mean, that's part of, even when they say eminent domain, we're coming, and the law is abundantly clear when it comes to eminent domain. I mean, it's the unfortunate practical reality of where that comes from. So we went through, they said it was a safety issue for the Northeast Extension. Now, you talked about Johnson Highway. I know the area very well because they're coming right down 202, and they've made a mess in front of your dentist, my office, all these things. And those acquisitions, believe it or not, go back in some cases 15 or 18 years when they actually took the easements and negotiated all those things, and we're 20 years later with 202 and Johnson Highway and some of those other things. I know specifically the sound barrier you're talking about when you kind of make that, you make that turn, you see it on the left-hand side now, so there's always conversations on those particular areas, and there is a, the governmental sort of which came first, the chicken or the egg, and sometimes doing things out of order. I mean, part of the mechanics of this is us doing all the things to make sure that we satisfy a grant, that we satisfied, so, the engineering work that was done, we were compensated for as a township. It didn't come out of our tax dollars. There's things that come with that on a timetable. As Lou said, there's not perfect answers in those cases, but certainly the concerns get noted. We certainly want to make sure that we're communicating those to the right people. We're being the squeaky wheel where we should be and can be. Sometimes we don't, as Steve said, we're limited sometimes in what we can do, but we're hearing what you're saying. We're also trying to serve all the masters if we can in that. And we'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to that portion of the agenda, but certainly I made notes of some of the comments that you've made and some of the specific concerns. If you want to email a copy to the board, that's fine. We're happy to have a copy of anything that, that was said tonight, and certainly we have it on the recording as well. I mean, but we also don't want to give false hope either that we have some magic thing that we can do. This is a step we need to take, or at least need to discuss taking, and we'll make that determination. And then, again, we're still a long way away from somebody putting a shovel in the ground, but this is kind of how the mechanics of it have to work, slow and steady. I mean, it is governmental in terms of that, but we appreciate the input, and you're always welcome to share any of your thoughts on the project, what we're doing, what we're not doing, and anything we can do. As Lou said, we certainly want to try to, but we also don't want to give you some false hope that we have some call we can make and something that we could magically do either, just to be honest. Okay, so does anybody else have any public comment for the board? Okay, if not, we'll move on to our official action items. First thing on the agenda is going to be the consent agenda, as I ask every month. Does any board member wish to remove any items from our consent agenda tonight?
No, sir.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda, treasury report, bill payment, and the November 2023 business meeting minutes.
And the amount of bill payments, Lou?
And the amount is $403,785.99.
403.
Is that what you said? Did I write it wrong?
Hang on a second.
Clarify.
Clarify the number. Sorry about that, Sean. I might have given him the wrong number when I...
It's 403, 785.49.
It's 49, okay.
49, okay, we both had 99. That's shame on us. Okay.
That may be my handwriting, sorry.
All right, the corrected
second that
number.
motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up on your agenda is a motion for a waiver of land development. That item has been moved. It is not going to be discussed in tonight's meeting, but it happened today, so it did not get removed from our printed agenda, and we wanted to leave it on there. Okay, next up. So Wendy, what's the best way? We now have the resolutions for authorizing filing of the eminent domain proceedings relative to 3 specific properties. Obviously, one is the one that John just mentioned at 1324 Dell Road. There's also 1330 Dell Road and 1412 Valley Forge Road. So do you want to take that one and sort of walk us through?
Sure, I can absolutely do that, and I can just explain all 3 in one.
Okay.
Explain all 3 together, and then you can take action on them consecutively, but separately. So, as you noted, these are all resolutions authorizing our office as the solicitor to commence eminent domain proceedings in order to obtain right-of-way, stormwater management facilities easements, or temporary construction easements for the Valley Forge Road Corridor project. And this project has been, it's been well over a year that the township has reached out to the affected property owners and requested to meet with those property owners to review the acquisitions that were necessary for the process, to explain the process, and to offer estimated just compensation for the various rights-of-way, temporary construction easements, or stormwater management facilities easements. At this point, we are down to these 3 properties. We have been successful in obtaining the consent of approximately, I don't have the numbers specifically, but approximately 20 documents have been voluntarily executed by property owners in exchange for compensation payments. So we are down to these 3. The first one is 1324 Dell Road, and that property, as you noted, is owned by Mr. Pelusi and his wife Grace. The deed of dedication for the right-of-way is for 1,802 square feet. The stormwater management facilities easement area is approximately 3,600 square feet. So that is the area that is being sought with respect to the property at 1324 Dell Road. The next property is 1330 Dell Road. That property is owned by John and Marissa Zopp. I have had some conversations with Mr. Zopp, and I believe we may be close, and he seems to understand the project, understand that it is necessary. He just had some minor questions, so it's on your agenda tonight, and I would recommend that you would proceed with the adoption of the resolution. There's still the possibility that if we do negotiate, not negotiate, but just satisfy him with respect to the documents, that we will not ultimately need to file a declaration of taking. That property is a deed of dedication for approximately 700 square feet and a stormwater management facilities easement for 2,977 square feet. And the third and final property is 1412 Valley Forge Road. That property owner is Stephen M. Camburn. We have sent numerous letters to this address. The manager has gone and knocked on the door. There's been no response whatsoever for over a year of attempting to contact the property owner. And this property, it would require a deed of dedication for right-of-way of 1,435 square feet and a temporary construction easement of 525 square feet and some change. So those are the three resolutions. And again, it would be the first step. It is authorizing our office to file eminent domain proceedings. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen tomorrow. If we would hear from property owners and we could still come to a point of having an agreement as to the execution of the documents, that's preferable.
Right.
I can say that, as I think you're probably aware, this project has been studied by the township traffic engineer for quite some time, and it is a project that is a benefit, a public benefit to the Worcester community due to the fact that it will improve traffic conditions along Valley Forge Road. And so it is an appropriate project that the board is within the board's power to commence eminent domain proceedings to pursue the project. And as you noted, it will still be most likely a number of years before a shovel would be put in the ground, but this is the next step to move things along.
Okay. So I'm going to start with, if anybody has specific questions to Wendy regarding this process or sort of where we are, we'll start there and then sort of move through any other questions you might have.
Just a statement more so that.
Sure.
They did have a presentation, and I believe it was the county that brought it up, not so much as state representatives for this. And it was going to be a number of years. It wasn't going to happen overnight. And they had the money guaranteed funding for the engineering, but not the construction. Am I correct on that? They did a presentation.
So it was a mix of county representation, and I think our traffic engineer participated in that as well, but I could be crossing up a couple of meetings. But to the general point, yes, there was funding.
Commitment?
And, I mean,
Engineering.
for engineering, and we had,
Construction.
correct, so we had McMahon, who's the traffic engineer, go through a long process to dictate from start to end on the roadway and try to make the best decisions to how do you build the road and where do you impact the road. It's a little bit of a windy road, and where do you take or not take and how you do that.
Where do they start? Because I know the intersection at Stump is the biggest problem, but, I mean, we don't know where they're going to start, and they're not going to start up here and work downhill.
Well,
You don't know, but.
you don't know for sure. You got a traffic light that was a piece of it at Woodland, so you conceivably would do something at Woodland with the traffic light. You would potentially do it in phases. You might start,
There are 3 phases, and they
Okay.
would start at one end and work to the other logically, but they don't know which phase would start.
Gotcha. But to your point, I mean, yes, I mean, there's,
Something, John, I'm just trying to help you. I think it's a ways out, in other words. It's not, you know, they're not digging up your yard tomorrow, so.
okay. And then just, so I went through it. I went through it when we had, they came knocking and we didn't want to, you wanted to fight it and we wanted to fight it and ultimately you couldn't in terms of that. But in terms of any resident or anybody's sort of response to that, do they have one? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we always,
Have any property owner who a declaration of taking is filed against certainly has the ability to consult with an attorney and to determine what the next steps would be with respect to the process. So and then during the process, the property owner has the right to contest, if they so choose, they could contest the amount of compensation. That would all be through the court process after a condemnation proceeding is filed.
Right.
But certainly, any property owner has the right to obtain counsel, and under the eminent domain code, property owners, I'm not saying anything that's not public knowledge, that any property owner has the right for reimbursement for attorney's fees up to a certain dollar amount. I believe it's still $4,000 for attorney's fees, appraiser fees, engineering fees, that type of thing. Under the eminent domain code, a property owner is entitled to that reimbursement.
okay.
But Rick, saying all that, I mean, we work with appraisers on different projects. And I hate for people to waste money. I don't want to say waste money. I don't want to say don't do it. But once again, you're fighting City Hall. City Hall comes in with a price they're going to pay you. I personally wouldn't agree to it, but, it's just the way the system works. I don't know if it's rigged, but all the properties aren't going to be renegotiated. They come up with a price that people signed off on it, and that's what they agreed to based on the appraisal of the system. And as I said before, we don't personally like being three small business owners. We're always fighting the system because we look out for cash flows and how things are done. And I think it's eye-opening to Mr. Betts.
Right.
First couple years he got involved with the board that it's not as easy as he thinks it is to get something done. There's a lot of hurdles you have to fight and argue with people about, and we're not happy with it.
Yeah.
John, if I could ask if you're going to comment, just to use the microphone so that
We get you on the
minutes
recording.
can
But,
reflect.
it-
Thank you.
yeah.
What do we do?
So, I mean, we got to make a motion, and at the end of the day, Wednesday, it's not a race to the court tomorrow to file things. It's the next step, and to see if we can,
Property owner reaches out, we're obviously still going to speak with them, but yeah.
and if we can satisfy, any of the concerns, then, but again, some of it's hard for us to satisfy independently, but certainly, certainly would be the goal. But I think we need to make a motion, and we need to vote on it.
I'm going to make that motion, and I appreciate Wendy, and if she'll help you best to go through whatever we have to deal with, but unfortunately, we have to do it this way. So I guess I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution for the filing of the 1324 Dell, 1330 Dell, and 1412 Valley Forge Road for the filing of eminent domain.
I'll second it.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay.
It's always tough, Mr. DeLello, dealing with neighbors and friends on these issues. You hate to see it. Nobody wants their property taken, the view of the pool and things like that. But when Big Brother says they're moving forward with things, we can stand in their way. But then they say, well, there goes your liquor fuel tax. There goes this. you know, they always have the little carrot there that they're waving in front of you saying, hey, this is the way the program's going to work.
Steve, I'll tell you another little funny story is that, I lost one of these situations. When we bought a property, it wasn't disclosed that they had, at the end of the day, it wasn't disclosed that they had already executed a little slice of the corner, and it wasn't the way my attorney advised me of this, not Wendy, another one of my favorite attorneys, that in essence said that in many cases, it's so far in advance, the way that the law, at the end of the day, we had no recourse, that it hadn't been disclosed, we had no recourse, it hadn't even been updated, was buried in the county, 1,000 pages deep, but until they actually go through the process of taking the land, which they haven't even done yet, but until that happens, it doesn't even get recorded in a way, like you say, well, how can that be okay? Like, but it was a similar scenario, and it was, the road's coming, and we're going to fix the road, and you lose. But it's an unfortunate situation for sure. Next up, we have our budget. We do not have an additional presentation, Sean, correct? We just have,
That is correct. So you are voting to approve the budget that had been advertised after the last month's final presentation.
Okay, so a quick little recap. For the last 3 months, we've had a presentation that started with a presentation of the budget, and then there's some additional sort of fine-tuning of just some of the end numbers when they're getting actuals as they come in. As we've said in many meetings, our budgeting process is a year-round sort of living document that the staff administratively makes sure that we're tracking all the revenue, all the expenses. Every year we true up and try to do a very fair and honest budget and representation for the coming year, what we expect revenues are going to be. We have always run, some will say at a surplus. I don't know that that's the perfect term to use, because ultimately excess funds go into, you might call it a rainy day fund, or for capital improvements and other expenses. But ultimately, we work very hard to set a budget that lives within the means of the community. We've been very fortunate for many years to have a very good process of budgeting. But we go through a presentation of that a couple of different times, and then we do an advertising. So our last month was to authorize that we would advertise the budget, and then December is when we adopt for 2024 the budget. And the high points from the presentations is we're not raising taxes. For the next year, we have Worcester Township has the lowest, what they call millage, which you need to have an advanced PhD in governmental craziness to understand what millage is, but we have the lowest one in Montgomery County. So ultimately, when you send property tax dollars in, we're getting a penny on the dollar, if that, or a half a cent on the dollar. So we try to, and we've been very fortunate not to have to raise that for many years. We're not raising it next year. The revenue sources that we have tend to be very stable. We're going to continue to maintain the same service levels that we've had in past years. We're still going to invest a lot of money in fixing our roads and a variety of other improvements within our system. But ultimately, we think we do a really good job of, we will tout our horn that we do a pretty good job of spending within the confines of what we have and trying to do a good job with that. But that's the structure of the budget. Does anybody want to make, before we get into a motion in a second, does anybody want to make any general comments on the budget from the presentations or just from past experience at this point?
Rick, I think the past 3 or 4 months we've gone over the budget, looked at the big things, the little things, and the needs of the township, and I think we've thoroughly reviewed it at different times, so I have no further comments on the budget.
Lou, you had anything?
I have no comments. I think we're in line, so.
In that case, I will entertain a motion if somebody would like to make one.
I'll make a motion that we approve the budget for 2024.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor?
Bob Andor in Worcester. apologize that I have not put more time and effort into looking at this, but I have a question regarding a specific line item.
Okay.
So I happen to be looking at the budget, it's page 32, or the presentation, I don't think this is the budget, but the presentation for the budget. Page 32 is interest on the capital fund.
Okay. Sean, can you give us a little more information? And do you understand the item, the line item he's referencing is?
I'm happy to go to my question if you want to do that. I'm just giving you an
If
opportunity.
you don't mind sharing it all, we'll,
No, so there are four columns there, 2022 actual, 2023 budget, 2023 projected, and 2024 budget. So I just want to be sure that I'm understanding this correctly, that 2022, the actual is what occurred during that year. The column labeled 2023 budget is what we had budgeted at the beginning or the end of 2022 that was adopted. Column listed as 2023 projected is year-to-date and/or a projection for how we'll close out 2023. And then 2024 budget is what we're looking forward to. Is that accurate? That's my understanding, but I can confirm that after. Okay, so, and my guess would be that the interest that is generated from reserve funds that we have. That's where our interest is coming from.
Yes.
And we have not had any significant change. I don't have those reserve numbers. They may be in here, but I don't know where I would locate those. But in general, we haven't had any significant reduction in reserves. In fact, our reserve has continually increased. Is that accurate?
that would be correct. Again, I don't have the exact dollar amount in front of me, but we have consistently grown the surplus as opposed to deprecated from the surplus in my time.
I don't know what those numbers are, but they're in the millions. And then on top of that, I understand the general specifics or the generality of interest rates that we've been generating those incomes from have been at historical lows,
Yep,
and those have only changed within the last year,
correct.
for the most part. That being said, I'm trying to understand how we could have achieved $230,000 in interest income in 2022 as an actual number, and then projected for 2023 that we would have only had $12,000, 5% of that amount, when the reserves haven't changed, and if at all, they have increased. And then on top of the fact that we had projected only 12,000, we're now showing, according to this number, $780,000, a difference of hundreds of percent.
780 comes.
I'm not seeing what you're seeing there,
I'm
Bob.
not seeing 780.
I'm not seeing any 700,000 on page 32 of what I have, so apologies if,
Actual budget projected.
yeah, that's not what I have on page 32, just. I have 12,000 here, but I have 137,000 projected for 2022, not 720, so I'm not sure.
Well, this is the document that's available
Yep.
for us to review.
Well, I get the same one. Well, I hear you. I don't, we would,
Without getting a resolution, I don't know how you guys could possibly pass a budget if you don't know what information is available to us, for us to understand. And if that's accurate, how do you get about, how do you go about achieving $200,000 in interest, knowing that it's not going to go down, and then you,
So we don't know that it's not going to go down. The essence of budgeting in the public sector is, you know, if when it comes to forecasting revenues, we would rather guess we're going to get less and get more, then guess we're going to get more and receive less. We want to make sure we have enough money at the end of the day because we can't run a deficit by law. So when it comes to things like guessing if the interest rates are going to remain at, decades-long highs next year when the whole economy seems to be debating what the Federal Reserve is going to do, we just take a look at our past years and assume that interest rates will not be as high as they will. And if they remain high, then great.
Talking about being optimistic, number one, I don't even have the correct information. So so I'm speaking,
Well, I can get back in touch with you, Bob, if you got
you're going to
questions.
vote on it.
What's that?
You're going to vote on it.
If you have questions, I can get back in touch. As you said, you didn't look at it until recently, but I'm happy to get back in touch with you to clarify your
How do I
question.
know what this document is my avenue here. I don't know if this is what's on the website. If this is what's on the website, then it's inaccurate.
Would you like me to get back in touch with you, Bob?
Mr. Anhorn's saying he's requesting maybe possibly that the board doesn't vote on it till you get a better answer. I think Sean's saying from his budgetary process is he's projecting, rather than projecting high, he's taken the precaution on the lower side and saying, I don't anticipate having all this revenue coming in and then have a shortfall.
Right. I don't know what those specific rates are, but clearly in 2022, I'm probably speaking out of record because I'm looking at this document, which is not what you're looking at. But if I'm looking at this and you achieve $200,000 in interest income on, let's say, $10 million of reserve,
Right?
that's a relatively low investment. And then in 2023, you said, I'm not going to get 1%, I'm going to get 0.0% to get only $12,000. And yet, you're projected to be $780,000. That's a tremendous disparity. I'm trying to understand. If you literally go into every year saying, my recollection, and I haven't been coming for years for my own sanity, but my recollection is you didn't sit here and say, we'll project that we get $0 in interest income and every dollar that we get is a windfall.
Right.
You need to use some kind of value judgment.
Well, I think once again, we leave some things up to the township manager as far as the billing, watching the numbers. We've had a transition. Mr. Ryan was here for 5 years, 6 years, and Tommy, that's the way Tommy did things. Sean's a little bit different as far as how he's managing the township. And to Sean's point, it's not really going to make a difference with the income coming in or out. It's just we voting on having the money or not having money, where we're going to spend the money. And I think Mr. Sean
So
was
there's a
saying
couple
that-
things we also do with that, Bob. I mean, so during the year, we go through a whole audit process to make sure that somebody's looking at, there's a couple things that happen. One is with fund accounting, year to year. There certainly were some decisions made over the years. When you transfer money to capital, there's requirements to where the money should sit or not. So when you have money moving or not, there were a couple of years where there were larger transfers that would have impacted the overall reserves and where the interest numbers would come from. But certainly there's been a significant difference in the last year in interest rates. But to your point, yes, if it was 700,000 versus 12,000, that's a large number disparity on an interest that we will want to drill into for sure to make sure that that number is accurate.
I mean, it's the threefold piece. It's going from 200,000 of actual achieved to having an unrealistically low expectation for the following year as the budget, and then having a completely different wild swing for what the projected is. So you're telling me, what I'm hearing is you're saying we don't project unrealistic expectations, and then yet the 2024 projection, you go even beyond the expectation for what we've already achieved this year based on, somebody tell me, you always go unrealistically low, in which case this $980,000 number, and I don't know if that's accurate for the 2024 budget.
Yeah, again, the number that you have doesn't match what I have, Bob. That's, and I can't,
I didn't print this off.
I understand what you're saying. I understand that, Bob. I'm going on the numbers that I have in front of me, and I don't have an answer for you for why your numbers are different. I don't have an answer for the question that you're asking.
As a member of your constituency, what would you expect me to do? What can I do? How can I provide any value to your procedure?
I don't know. I don't, again, Bob, I'm not sure.
Thank you for your comment.
Well, Rick, I think we're voting on the numbers in front of us.
Correct. We're,
May I have this only copy back here, just so that there's a record of something that was presented?
I would say yes.
yeah, I'm not,
You can have anything you want, son.
I,
I just would like a record, so that later on, when I'm told that
Uh,
I'm full of shit, that I say, oh, no, I'm not, I was looking at this.
I'm a little confused, I guess. So there's numbers that we have in front of the board this
Yep.
Right.
evening that don't appear to match whatever Mr. Andorn has there.
correct.
My question is, where did that document that Mr. Andorn just returned come from?
It was,
that was sitting there since last, I think, month's budget presentation.
So is it the budget that the board has in front of it? I assume that's available, that is at the township building?
That was posted on the website with the meeting agenda last Friday in the meeting packet.
That would be the budget that you are
we're, that is what we're voting to adopt.
perhaps there might be, I hate to say it, a mix-up or a clerical error that whatever the document that Mr. Andorn is referring to is not the document that the board
Right.
is
Correct.
acting on this evening.
Right, that's what we're not voting on. We're not voting on Mr. Anhorn document, we're voting on the documents in front of us.
So wouldn't it be helpful maybe to, the item that he is questioning his interest on page 32, Sean, could you let us know what it actually does read, what the proposed budget does read?
I guess sort of I think I see where you're going, and the question is, can we vote to adopt the budget subject to clarifying that item? I mean,
I think,
What was posted on the
right,
website and what was in fact advertised. My recommendation would be that you would proceed. It seems to me that there's a mix-up
yep.
with what that document, that physical document is there versus what is in front
Right.
of you. That's what I'm gathering.
And to Mr. Anhorn's point, that's the information he was provided. So I think the township is, I want to say at fault, but there's a problem with the miscommunication with the township.
Come in this evening and pick up that binder and that's the first time you've looked at
Yeah, they were on they were two, it was on the board, it was on the table.
I'm just trying to understand. You didn't go to the township website or you didn't go to the township building and request a copy of the budget. What you're looking at is that binder right there. Okay.
Wendy, you can't be first.
Packet of information that's available is, there are multiple copies in addition to the agenda that are available for the residents to take and mark up and have comments on. And in this particular case, there are two binders here. There are no copies for us to have at all. I just happen to be looking at that binder. But it would be my understanding, if you present this binder is dated November 15th.
No, that's the draft minutes from the last meeting. That's just the first item in tonight's meeting packet, Bob. That was printed earlier today.
That being said, it was printed earlier. The budget has been out there for several months. You can't change the budget on a month-to-month basis. You advertise this. I'm presumably looking at this. Maybe it's Maybe it is a clerical error, somebody's printed off the wrong document.
That's what it seems
All right,
to
so, Bob, if you're providing comment, we can't hear you unless you're at the microphone. So if we're going to carry the comment on for another chapter, can we at least get it on the record, please?
For the record, I showed up tonight. This is the first time I have not been coming to meetings, again, for my own.
You were there last month, I remember, for some reason, I remember that last month. I'm not sure why.
I'm sorry?
I think you were at the last month meeting, weren't you? Was that binder there last month?
I have no idea if the binder was here last month. But last month, there was a packet of information that we could pick up, take with us, mark down, et cetera. This is the first month that those, I don't know if that's a conscious decision that the townships made, that they don't want to print off excess stuff that gets recycled. I'm not sure, but there's no documentation available to us to take other than the agenda. If you've changed your rules and all of a sudden it's our responsibility to go to the website, print off a document, and review it and mark it up, then please let us know that's our responsibility. That being said, I'm just looking at one document. You can't change that document. If that document existed in November, it better be the same thing you have, because that's when you proposed voting on it. You can't say, let's vote on it next month and make a change to it, and then vote on whatever you changed. You have to be doing all of that. I don't know why that document is different. But I'm
Because it's
raising a
old.
concern.
That binder has been here for at least a month. The budget binder that you were looking through.
No, but we're,
Well, you're voting on the budget tonight. It's on the agenda items. There's no copy of the budget for me to look at.
There is on the website.
understood,
That being said,
understood.
I'm opposed to your new process and your new regulations and the availability for people to make comments. If you just want to sign off on it and say, okay, it really doesn't make a difference, but the information that's available, that is a significant component. What else would I find?
Thank you for your comment.
Mr. Chairman, I understand Bob's frustration, no question, I understand the frustration. And does it really matter financially if we don't pass it tonight till we get this matter cleared up?
So I don't know the answer to that, but
No, the budget has to be passed prior to the end of the year, and this is the last meeting prior to the end of the year, per the second-class township code.
Okay, that being said, can we address Mr. Anhorn's questions and have the response ready for him for the next meeting?
Can it be amended later? Any part be amended?
You can amend anything, I think.
I understand that, but can we amend it if we find a flaw or a clerical error?
Strictly speaking, no. This is it passing tonight, but there's no error here. I mean, his concern is that we under-budgeted interest,
Right.
as I understand
no,
it.
what he's questioning is that the numbers that we have in front of us in our packet do not match the numbers in the packet that's at the back of the room.
But that packet he's referencing was not prepared for this meeting tonight. I mean, the budget is not, that was attached to the website with the agenda, and the meeting packet is not here in this room.
So all the things that were advertised do not represent that.
That budget is from a previous meeting, that budget binder that he was looking at. And I think the pages may be off, and that he may be looking at a column from page 31 on 32. I'm not sure. But what I'm looking at in this binder here is correct.
This is what we advertised.
Yes.
This is what was
You're
advertised.
voting on, right.
This is budget that, what we have in front of us is what we're passing. And there are some other administrative questions regarding the packet that was back on that table. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. But if that packet is taken tonight, I can't really look into it and compare it to this.
Okay, you're happy to take a picture of the page, Bob. I'm not trying to deny you any opportunity to have a copy of whatever it was ultimately, but we want to figure out why that's different.
Come on down. I'm coming up to the. I know. For the record.
Could you share with me what those numbers are in your budget?
So on page 32, under,
I don't, it doesn't matter on the page number, it's specifically regarding interest income.
right, I have
For which fund?
it was the capital fund was what Bob was showing us on page 32. I mean, I guess what I'm looking at is the capital fund interest, which shows the actual in 2021, which was 6,600, and, excuse me, I don't have my glass. Excuse me.
Do you gentlemen have multiple copies? Could I just borrow one of your copies so I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at?
You can have one of mine. Here.
That's fine. He can provide you a copy of what we have right in front of us. That's on the page in question. He'll get you a copy.
I just
The other-
couldn't
as
follow.
he's-
The number, you gave me a number already, and I couldn't
I'm with you.
wasn't focusing on whether it was
Right.
thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands.
I think Mr. Anhorn's other bigger question is, their bigger concern is the change in the way the administration
So
is requesting the information that the public has before the budget and items were there in a hard copy for the people to look at. And I'm assuming that you thought that was the copy back there that the people used to be able to pick up before the meeting.
So we certainly
review.
didn't make any specific change. We did have a staff member leave on December 1st, but we didn't make a change to not provide that.
Understood. That being said, if the numbers are, again, I'm not looking at it, I don't know what I'm looking at yet, but my concern was we went from hundreds of thousand actual to a projection of 10,000 roughly, and then showing projected year-to-date for 2023 of in excess of $750,000. And then I was hearing that, well, we don't want to overestimate, yet we significantly underestimated. And then when I hear that you say, well, we don't underestimate, the document that I was looking at, again, I don't know what you're looking at, and as soon as I see that, I can then say, well, wait a minute, if you're already projecting that 2024 is in excess of 2023, and that doesn't bode with the comment that you just said that we don't overestimate. So, I mean, the revenues continually go up, the interest rates have gone up. I'm not asking for you to, look in a crystal ball and come up with a number. I'm just saying that I don't know that.
No, but they should be, but we do have a process where we're trying to mirror an actual to a budget. Saying this was the actual, the interest
Every budget item you have a projected, and then every month you update it. Some go up, some go down. I'm not here questioning it. This is a dramatic difference, and I'm trying to understand how you go about doing that and what the numbers were. But so I don't. Is there a copy of what you have available that I can look at while you specifically
right
say
there.
those numbers?
He's going to give you a copy, right?
Oh. What page are you looking at, Rick? So I can.
Page 32, under the interest for the capital fund.
This doesn't even have your budget for 2024. This says 2021 actual, 2022 budget, 2022 projected, 2023 budget. Seems like that's a year old. Am I reading that incorrectly?
2023 stuff here, Sean. It's not the 2024. For those particular items. All of that stuff.
Rick, do you want to recess for a minute? This might take.
Yeah. So we're going to recess for 5 minutes so we can get the 2024 numbers.
Perfect.
Okay, so he's going to pull that up onto the screen for us, and we're going to continue. So Bob, apparently the number you have back there is correct. Okay, so now that I can see what is posted up there, 233,000 was the projected for 2022. The budget for 2023, which was actually prepared by Tommy before he left, so I can't speak specifically to why he would have put 12,000 versus whatever the number should have been, but a more reasonable reflection of the 2022 actual. And then the other two figures you see are, we are projecting from 233,000 up to 760,000 is the 2023 projection. And then next year, we've increased that. I think it was to 960, and I'm going off my brain, but so that's where those 4 columns come from. Apparently what you had out there was accurate. The board actually had a printout that had the 2024 cover page and had 2023 budget information in that. But what we have been presented with previously is consistent with what you are seeing back there and what is out on the website.
Correct. So if you wanted to throw Tommy under the bus and said, you know, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just saying, Tommy came up with it, it has nothing to do with it. Then I sit here and say, well, you know, last year, why didn't somebody say that number is ridiculous? That being said, you're voting on a document that you're looking at that's incorrect.
It's been presented to us, Bob, last month, the month before, the month before. You're right, I did not go through every single page of what was here tonight in front of me because we've gone over it for the last
I
3
get that.
months.
I'm
And
just- Aren't you concerned that the stuff that you're looking at is incorrect? I am.
I think you've shared that point just fine, Bob.
I understand his comments, understand that. And once again, it goes back to when B comes in and does the audits and things like that, some of these things are cleared up and there's checks and balances, but we're arguing over, rightfully so, the interest rates or where the money's gonna go. It's not an item we're spending money on. And as I said when it first happened, and I'm not throwing Tommy under the bus, but it's a discrepancy between how Sean does his books versus Tommy does his books and where the money goes. Sean's more on the cautious side, saying that as whatever Sean said is you have to be optimistic or pessimistic as far as the money coming in.
Right.
And he wants to err on the side of being more, maybe we won't get that money in that we're budgeting. We don't want to over budget for something we're not getting in. And that's a problem with the document back there.
This is the correct document.
Right.
This is projecting more than 2023.
Understood.
Hopefully you're being more realistic than optimistic because you're being
I think you've shared how you feel on that fairly. We're good in that regard, Steve. We have before us, figure that the budget that we're voting on is what is out on the website, is what we've been presented.
The numbers here we're looking at.
Not these ones. What's out on the website.
What's right.
That we have spent the last 3 months reviewing. This is what we need to make a choice to adopt. I'll entertain a motion if somebody wants to do that. Bob has shared his comments on the matter. That's totally fine.
Right.
So would either one of you want to make a motion on the 2024 budget?
Mr. Lella, I will make the motion, but I think due to his concerns, and we have a certain constraints we deal with, is that we have some type of audit to make sure everything was done correctly as we move forward before we get too far in the year, if we can look into that.
Okay?
So I will make the motion as far as the budget we're discussing here tonight.
I will second the motion as long as we can put a note on there that if there's any corrections that need to be done, can be done in the future. So if it's been presented by accounting, then so be it. So I'll make the second on that.
It's been moved and seconded.
This is weird.
No, I mean, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. To your question, we certainly will take every effort to make sure that everything we present financially is correctly, that we put all our checks and balances in place on that. I don't know what that specifically looks like. I'm not going to make an assessment other than making sure that we're crossing Ts, we're dotting Is, and we're reporting correct information, we're tracking correct information, and we're doing things correctly. So next up, we have other business. Does anybody have any other business they wish to bring before the board?
I have a number of things. One, I guess, again, this is, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we need to do a little more based on Bob's comments, printing more of the information out for the public to have to review as we go through our process.
Sure. So historically, we have always printed out sort of the materials, and we want to make sure we are continuing to do that at meetings. To your point, that's not something we do want to put them out on. There's a couple things. We want to make sure that on the Friday before, the effort hasn't changed. The effort is to get on the Friday before the Wednesday, that everything gets posted out to the website. And certainly if somebody just comes here, that there's a packet that has the agendas and it has the material that could be provided. There are occasionally things that we might get that are not in the packet, but certainly the effort is to have that. So in answer to your question, I don't think we want to change that. I think that has worked fine and should be what we do going forward.
Okay, that's
Does
one.
that make sense? That's fine.
One. I'm all right with that. So far, we're doing pretty good. Number two is on January 2, we're going to do reorganization. I'm requesting that if Chairman would pursue any appointments, new appointments, not reappointments, because the boards, and they have different terms as far as resumes, as far as, I don't know new people coming in, and I like to read their resume as far as are they qualified. And since we're voting on that, I'm requesting that. I need more information.
I don't understand what you're asking for, because I want to make sure we can provide it.
Well, when people volunteer to do something,
Right?
say land planning or zoning, and they're the two boards, and I don't think the North Penn Water Authority is up again, is it, or? But I mean, I think
So
we
if
should
you're
provide a resume with like.
Are you talking about folks that are,
Volunteering,
I understand. So one example, so Bob is up for reappointment
yes.
for Planning Commission. Are you asking to have additional information on Bob, who's already on the Planning Commission, or are you talking about additional candidates who might be under consideration?
Since Bob's term is ending and he can be reapplying, again, I would just want a cover sheet to state, submit to the board to, like, I would like to be reappointed based on experience in his technical when he's in construction. Just to be above board for everybody. I mean, no matter, even if it's a new person coming in, I think we need to identify that this person's qualified to be on that board. And it's just not like,
So-
I worked at an ice cream factory, and not no offense to you, that I want to be on land planning. So I'm sorry about that, but that's all right. It just came to my brain.
So a couple things. So first off, Sean has communicated to all of us through the memo in terms of individuals who are up for reappointment, and those individuals, we asked them all, are they interested in being reappointed? And most will tell us, yes, I'm interested in being reappointed. Occasionally, they will say no, and that has all been communicated out to us in terms of candidates on our zoning board. So those individuals who are up on the zoning and those individuals who are up for planning, all of them who are up for reappointment, we have spoken to and have expressed their interest in being reappointed at this juncture. There always can be individuals who would want to apply and when they do apply. So we had somebody that applied for zoning, maybe it was a month ago, Sean, forgive me if I don't have the exact date, and then his resume was in our packet. Like we got the memo, exactly what you're asking for was included in that. So anybody new who would come before us to want to serve on any one of those boards, we do get that, and they are sent out to all of us. So there's only been one individual that I'm aware of.
And I got a brief statement on that, and I'm going to correct myself, and I'm going to review that again.
Okay, but we certainly want to make sure you get any information you can. We historically have not asked those who sit on the boards already to sort of re-qualify themselves. That's not something we've historically provided. And I don't want to put any burden on somebody that's already volunteering unnecessarily, but that's,
Two more items. I'll
Okay.
let you go on that one. I'll stand corrected that I'm going to review my documents.
okay.
Our hired people for our township, I believe that the board should have final approval on anybody being hired. Now, this is my recommendation to the chairman.
Okay.
Member Quigley, that we have 2 full-time employees, 1 contracted employee. We're understaffed, I believe, and I think that if anybody new that's being hired, I think we need to be the final approval. So my request is the board needs to see the final, I think we need an in-person interview. I'm sorry, but I'm not just saying, yeah, based on anybody's. We need to do the final interview. I don't care if it's a half hour. I think we need to, anybody that's coming new on board, I want to interview. Because people come and go here, and I think we need to have a little more stability. So no matter how they're leaving, I think we should, this is my recommendation. I'm going to use that term right now.
Sure.
If
So,
you disagree, that's fine.
Yep.
I think we need a little more stability in this township.
Lou, are you suggesting that the people come here the day of the next January 2nd and make a presentation that are?
Well, I'm not talking about hired, that's 2 things. One, the appointments for the zoning board, and we only have 1. Rick clarified that. So I'm going to review that and make my judgment. I'm talking about anybody new hired for anybody on staff, any type of manager, any type of, not public work so much, but in the office building.
So you're not talking about appointments?
No,
yeah, he's
for
talking,
that. You're talking in the township?
correct. Correct.
Now,
I think we need to be
Are you
the
saying your
final.
discussion a public meeting?
No.
Okay.
In our other building, I just think if they're going to hire somebody that's going to be recommended, I think we need to sit down and confirm that we have confidence that they'll be a good employee.
So you're saying the road crew as well?
It would be nice. I think so. That would be important because I've brought it up a number of things on, as far as paying of the bills, I think I'd like to go over with Rick and you, and I think we could save some money and adjust some things. But
Let me ask you a question. Would this also include the public works people that are fire people?
yes, I think we have a challenge there also. I need to be identified. So that being that, and then the third one is I believe there's a code of conduct. There was a comment made that somebody flipped me the bird in October meeting. I brought it up to the 2 other board members and 2 attorneys, and I just wanted, it's been documented at a meeting, so whether it's a disciplinary action, and I see the personnel manual, but I don't believe childish behavior should be handled, disciplined. Any unprofessional conduct's got to be documented, and if need be, then I guess I'll have to file a written complaint. But at this point, I'm just documenting this to the board that we need to identify our personnel manual. And, flipping a bird, I guess, is, I'm a man, I'm not a child, so if you're going to act like a 5-year-old, that's fine, you can do that, but I don't think it's unprofessional.
I'm just going to jump in for a second.
yeah, if you don't mind, that would be,
Anything with regard to personnel would be appropriate for an executive session, but any discussion with regard to any potential violations of any personnel manual shouldn't occur during the public meeting. So,
This was trying to amend the personnel manual, is what I'm trying to do, not so much identify any situation. So
So
that's not
you-
in there, in other words.
so you can make a more general comment about the
That's what
personnel
I'm trying to make a
manual.
general comment.
Yeah, let's stay out of anything specific. You're making a general comment about that. So, I'm going to make a quick comment on the hired people. So, our code is written very, very specifically in terms of responsibilities, and ours are not. Hiring people, ours are not. I hear your comments. I hear what you're saying. We can discuss it collectively. We certainly can discuss it at the reorganization meeting. But what you're suggesting is not just, hey, let's just have a last look by us. It just
Please, I would like
isn't.
to have
Yeah.
a gut feeling. You hire people, a number of people, Steve also, and I have too. And I just think we have a better gut feeling to retain people. So that's my comment.
I think this goes to, once again, the township back in, we discussed back in the late 90s, adopted a policy for the manager to,
Yep.
what's the manager's responsibilities are. I think that stuff sort of falls under that a little bit there.
Sure. Well, we're going to have, again, I guess we'll have to discuss that further. But I
Just making recommendation that we make some changes, that's all.
fair enough. You got anything else on that list?
No, I did cover them, and there's some other things, but I think I'm gonna let it go tonight, because
So my list is a little bit more tame than that. There's two things that I want to discuss with you, both regarding our January 2nd reorganization meeting. One is last year, Lou, as you recall, we adjusted the meeting time from 7, and I think that's worked out well. However, we potentially have challenges when we have a work session, in having the work session at 6:30 and the other meeting at 7. And I want us just to consider, I don't know that it needs to be for all our, we don't do a lot of work sessions, but as we do work sessions, whether we just have to consider, as an example, if we had a joint session with the Planning Commission, I don't know that we can adequately have that meeting if we start at 6:30 and then we have our business meeting at 7 o'clock. That doesn't give us an opportunity to sort of conduct that meeting, and just that we would have the opportunity to either consider adjusting our work session to be 6 p.m. Again, we don't need to do this until the reorganization meeting, even talk about it, but that was one item this year where the couple of times we had a work session, you start with, we still have all the mechanics of Pledge of Allegiance, public comment, and then we have a short presentation, and then we're closing up the meeting. So as an example, let's say the Kriebel Mill Bridge, that we decided we wanted that to be a work session, or we talked about, last month, there was a conversation about the sign ordinance, and we might want to have a conversation on the sign ordinance. Well, having a 6-minute meeting isn't necessarily an effective way for some of those topics. And when you sort of back out how much time it takes to do the mechanics of that, I want us to consider whether we need to make any change in time on the work session, or we would do that on a case-by-case basis. So,
that.
okay.
Unless you want to start all meetings at 6:30, and they could be identified as work session, and then
Well, we can,
followed by.
we need to talk about that. Again, I wanted to put the idea in your head so that when we talk about it at the January 2nd, it isn't the first time you've heard that. The other thing that I'd like you both to be giving some thought to, I know you've given thought to this, Lou, I know, but I'd like to sort of put our calendar together a little bit better in 2024 for scheduling work sessions and different things. We talk about, so last month, and I'm going to use Bob as an example, because he brought up last month some issues with the sign ordinance. We said, you know, we should look at that, or we said we should do that. Okay, well, what I'm saying is I want to do a little better job of saying, all right, well, let's map out 2024. That's a good topic for a work session. Let's figure out when we want to do that and get the calendar built out a little bit better, so that when we talk about things, or we've talked about Kriebel Mill a couple of times, and then it sort of goes dormant for one reason or another, the calendar. We talked about the audit tonight. Well, in historically over the summer, we try to have an audit presentation, so that you just start filling the calendar to things, so we know when things are available. I know maybe it was last year, or it was 2 years ago, that Friends of Worcester wanted to make a presentation on something and came and made a presentation to us, and that was a good topic for a work session. So I want us to just be thinking, if there are topics that are important, that we're getting those out, we're sharing those, we're getting them on a calendar, so that we know we're not missing some of the things that you guys have brought up. And that's, I think, just a better way for us to plan our time in terms of that. So again, no action needed tonight, just if there's things that you feel like, hey, we want to go over this or that, that we can do a better job of just getting the calendar sort of aligned to topics that we think are important and where they belong, and the best way to do that. So those are my two sort of other business items in terms of that.
Are you still in favor of the 7 o'clock meeting? Or are you trying to adjust that?
I'm not trying to adjust that
Okay,
at
I'm
all.
just asking.
What I'm saying is I think the 7 o'clock meeting is fine. I think that we run the meeting. Most months, it is a non-issue. What I don't want to do is I don't want to shortchange when we have a topic that needs a little bit more dialogue on it, or the audience wants to participate. I don't want to shortchange the public if they want to share. So we had John Palusi earlier tonight, and I didn't want to, it wasn't a, hey, 5 minutes, let's, get him off. There's times we want to be able to do that. So if you have a work session on a topic and people are sharing, I don't want to be saying, hey, sorry, your comment doesn't matter because we've got to meet the 7 o'clock start time. That's all.
When do we,
Right.
go ahead. Let's do go.
I understand Rick's position.
I'm agreeing with you. I think we,
No, I don't want to have a later meeting. I don't want to keep anyone here any later than they need to be. I think I have a good track record of wrapping up the meeting, other than being long-winded. I think we do a pretty good job when there's nothing left to discuss.
you're fun to listen to. I mean, I like to start all the meetings at 6:30 and then let them blend over, but I see your point of view that,
We don't have a work session every month,
I
that's
understand.
all.
We don't, and we don't have a lot of them.
But I think there are some topics you brought up, some things you brought up, some stuff about the school, and then you got this, now you're on the committee at the school, and I don't want to, we're not building a school,
Not going
folks.
there.
We're not going to have that conversation tonight. But invariably, when topics like that come up, we want to make sure we have adequate time to talk about them, that's all.
Great.
So again, no action needed tonight, just if there are things that matter, that's just a better way for us, I think, to plan our calendar. Anybody else have any other business?
I'm good.
Okay. Fair enough. So our last item is public comment. Does anybody wish to make any additional public comment for the board? Seeing none, then motion to adjourn.